Sorry about that.
Yep. Seems that we're now streaming live on YouTube.
We're not, hang on, we're not there yet. I'll tell you.
See, Mark always says that, but it says it's live and streaming. I think he's trying to lull us into a false sense of security.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Watch
this is
out.
where we start scratching ourselves. I know.
You cut in.
It's live now.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Mark. Thank you. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for those who've joined. There's a couple of things to go through, but I'm just going to take item 1 first, apologies and declarations of interest. So, Anita, do we have any apologies for this evening?
Ashton has texted me and said he won't be able to join me.
Okay, you broke up then, Anita, but I think we got that. David Rushton has given apologies.
He's coming online later. He's not there at the moment.
Okay. Thank you. Any more apologies? Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest? Okay, thank you very much. Packed agenda tonight, so please just raise your hand if and come across anything. And Paul's joining us now. I'll just wait till Paul's properly connected for the next item.
Yeah, he's on.
Hi, Paul.
Evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Paul, I just ask for any declarations of interest if you have any. I'll take that as a no. Folks, the first thing I just want to turn to is, even though we're out of the official period of mourning, I still think it's appropriate that we observe a minute's silence following the passing of His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh. So if I could just ask that we start now and just observe that, please. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Just a couple of more of just admin items, basically. The agendas are packed on tonight, but I have actually had to cut it down and be quite mercenary and only deal with items which really need to be treated now, or there's a deadline, or where we have residents waiting on us. There have been some other items cut out, and for anybody watching or any councillor, I must emphasise we've had to deal with the immediate tonight, not necessarily the important. So if an item has been cut out, you're expecting to see or be discussed, it's not that it's not important, but we only have a statutory 2.5 hours, and there are things we do need to get back on. But the next meeting is in 3 or 4 weeks' time, and we will get to it. The third thing I just want to say is welcome back, John. Good to see you back on your feet or sat down. So hope you're feeling better, and good to see you. Okay. Just I guess fourth.
Yeah, thank you. I'm fine. I'm fine now.
I just couldn't find the old unmute, but comes to all of us. And just finally, just I suppose it's thanks, bit of a surprise, David Watson. Obviously, the communications have come through about those who are automatically nominated, and I see David Lamasney, who's also just joined the meeting, is obviously duly elected for Newton, and obviously, yes, it looks like yourself is leaving us. It's like David's already in the garden.
Yep. Well, no, Chairman,
Good
it
way
seems
to
to
go.
be an appropriate time to change, given that all that's been happening with the borough council, the county council, all of that. David was keen to take over. So after I think it's nearly 25 years, it seemed to be an appropriate time to put it up for how to.
David, well, David, thank you very much. I can't, I say, just obviously, I won't say it's, yeah, obviously I've kind of learned that a couple of days ago, having seen the papers that came through. So, I mean, I hardly feel qualified to say it, David. I think I was a wee slip of a boy when you were first a councillor, but David, thank you very much. Certainly from myself, thank you for your
How very true.
help and guidance. So, and 25 years is an awful long time. So I think, you know, certainly on behalf of the council and the councillors here, I'd like to say thank you for that. That's a quarter of a century helping out your community in this way. And as I've had to unfortunately emphasise recently to a couple of residents, this is a thankless task. It is voluntary, it is unpaid, and somebody has to do it. And you've done it for a long, long time. So thank you very much, David. It's much appreciated.
It's been fun from the berm to Gigaclear. It's been interesting.
Interesting, that's the word.
So goodbye, David. Obviously, welcome other David as the only candidate from Newton, and obviously we'll have fuller discussions in the weeks and months to come. But again, finally, David Watson, thank you very much. Thank you very much for everything you've done, everything you've been involved with. Thank you. Splendid. Let's after those bits, let's just move to item 2 then. So again, questions sent in by public, but let's just address members of the public who've joined. Just in order of joining, I'm not sure. I think David Lamasny, anything to raise?
Hello, no, I haven't, thank you. I'm just practicing.
So we all.
Indeed.
Thank you. Clive Curtis.
Right, first of all, can I just say, as a resident, a big thank you to David. I've just heard the news. As a resident, and thank him for all the work that he's done over the last 25 years, and he will be sorely missed.
Thank you, Clive. Thank you.
Right, okay. Yeah, what I've come on for is me and Richard Broughton sent an email in to you, Nick, and to Mark to request a site meeting. And that was about 3 weeks ago. We've heard nothing, which is a bit disappointing, to be honest. And basically asking, can we arrange a site meeting now? Hopefully over the next 7 days, we could do it in the early evenings. Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to clog up the parish council meetings.
Sure. No, appreciate that, Clive. Mark, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Chair. As I replied to Anita to the request, which I assumed had been forwarded on, we at the time we were in Purda, and we still are officially in Purda, so it would have been inappropriate to have a meeting so close to the election. So I suggested we do it after May the 6th. So I'm more than happy for it to be arranged an evening of the first week after May the 6th. So from May the 10th onwards.
To me, that's fine, because that would mean then that we would have had it before the next parish council meeting, and it would stop us from clogging up the next meeting as well. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So how do we arrange the date?
I'll arrange it with Anita.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Anita, you got your hand up. Sorry, or you?
Yeah. Mark, I haven't seen that email. When did you send that?
About 10 minutes after you sent the request, from memory. It was pretty straight away.
I haven't seen it, and I haven't got any outstanding, unless it's another one gone into the spam box, but I do check it pretty regularly now.
Yeah. Well, I sent it straight away. So
Well, apologies, but I haven't seen it, so I can only apologise.
Okay.
Okay. So look, Clive, yeah, that sounds good. If that'll be all right, if Mark arranges through Anita to meet with yourself and Richard, if he's free, between the 10th and the 17th. And if you let us know, I'll try and join that as well. And then we can further the flooding issues.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah,
Okay. Thank you very much, Clive. Thank you.
Chair Rebecca,
yes,
ask you
just
to join since.
Hi, Becky.
Hi, you're right.
Yes, thanks.
I only had about 15 minutes notice. I'm a bit disorganised. I'm sort of half at work.
No worries. Presume this is in relation to your application, which we're going to be discussing a bit later on the meeting.
Yep.
No worries. I was explaining just beforehand, we have an absolutely packed agenda tonight. I'm going to be very, very strict on timings. Do you, however, you're absolutely got the right, and please free to speak. So Becky, what would you like to say to us, which again we'll just make a note of and then consider when we get to.
Okay, so if I just say what I need to say and then I can come out of the meeting and
absolutely.
Let me just turn my phone to silence. So basically, it is just an office in the garden. It's a sustainable wooden structure with solar panels. It's there won't be anybody visiting the office because all my work, I'm a sleep consultant, so all my work is either remote or I go to people's houses. So you know, that won't affect traffic or parking or anything like that. It's actually about 27 meters away from the listed building, and you should just about probably see the roof of it from the road if you stood right back at the post office. But if you were just standing in the road, you wouldn't be able to see because our garden is 3 meters higher than the road. Okay. And that's it really. I just wanted somewhere to work that was sustainable. During COVID, it's become apparent that more people, if they can, and it's a government incentive for us all to work at home if we can. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I was just going to say, does anybody have any questions? I've got one. Peter, if you don't mind, Becky, if we just ask you any questions now.
Just to take the opportunity, since the applicant's there, and it's something that was also flagged by a resident in a query that's on the Kettering planning site, which is the materials, because the design access statement states that the material is 70 millimeters thick pine logs left natural, whereas the elevations show that it's timber boarding that's painted. So I just, that resident who's got his query on has also got the same question.
Oh, okay, that must be, I didn't even notice that myself because I left it with the architect. It is logs, 70 mil thick logs. That's okay. The outcome.
Thanks for the clarification.
I had the same question actually, that was the only clarification. The rest of it, I think, Becky, seems to be quite straightforward. Thank you.
It's just, and it's the reason why it's 70 mil logs is because that is the only all round that I can use that is sustainable.
Okay. Thank you, Becky. Thank you. Any more questions for the resident? Obviously, we'll actually discuss the matter later on. So, anything else, anyone? Great, Becky. Thank you actually taking the time to come to the meeting. I'm sorry it was a bit whistle stop, but we actually appreciate it. It doesn't always happen, so thank you for making the time.
No problem at all. So I'll say goodbye, so I'm not interfering on your meeting, and thank you for listening to me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks very much.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Thank you. Right. Thank you. Right. Crisply going back to the agenda. Reports from county and borough councillors. Anita, do we have anything from Victoria? No. Again, with Purda, I suppose there's not going to be anything. Mark, is there anything you can say or will say?
Nothing's happened because we're in Purda.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Mark? Which again he can answer, but okay, sure. Right. Thank you, everybody. Right, we are bang on track where I'd hoped it would be. Minutes of the last meeting. So the first item is the approval of the usual monthly meeting, which was held on the 8th of March. And everybody, I think, has been in receipt of those twice now. Is there any questions or issues with those minutes? Okay, thank you very much. In that case, can I propose that we accept those minutes?
Yeah, I'll second them.
Mark seconding. Thank
Yeah.
you. And all those in favour of that proposal, please raise your hand.
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chairman.
David, you can raise a garden rake.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I'll
Thank
abstain
you.
because I wasn't there.
Yeah. So I was going to say abstain. We have John. Anyone else? Against? Great. Thank you very much. Right. Okay. Just in terms of actions arising, then I will run through. I'll probably try and avoid sharing my screen because I think we can get through this relatively quickly. But again, because I can't now see everybody, please shout if I miss something. The first item raised by Doug as a resident was the non-cleaning vertical ironwork grids drains in Wood Street and to request the cleaning of them. Anita, did you manage to report that through?
Yeah, that was reported. The last time I looked, it said it was investigating. We will use the info provided to assess and prioritize this fault in accordance with our published response times for fault report. That was on that was quite a while ago, so I need to have a look at it again. So I'll have a look for an update and send the update round to everybody.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, and this kind of emanated from some concerns from Newton over the application for the caravan storage place. Clark asked KBC why they're not transparent. I think the question was that it's kind of visibility of the consultees. I think Peter and others had spotted that in a recent training session. Yeah, state that some applications do show consultee input, and any applications go to committee of consultee input. Anita, did you manage to get something off with all that mouthful or get any answers?
Yeah, she said, well, whoever replied said, we have started to upload comments with all new NK applications moving forward. Everyone will be able to see comments that have been made. So they are virtually going to do what we hope they would do.
And I have noticed that, we may touch on that in planning, that actually you can actually see comments from now on. They don't proactively list consultees by the looks of it. And strange enough, I've looked at some recent applications, they've got a whole load of things that have come back, but actually not our own comments. So, which is unusual. But again, I may just have been looking at a different one. Sorry, Anita.
Actually, I looked at an application for something, and I noticed that as well, that they don't seem to list the parish council ones. So
there we are, marginalised again, aren't we?
I have seen some with our comments on, but some of them are still going through the system, like the Larkfleet one. You can't see the comments on that one.
Yeah, I think it must be those that have been initiated recently. Sorry, yeah, I can see your hand. I think Mark, just in the corner of my eye.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Larkfleet, but they have got a backlog of putting documents onto the system. So there's a backlog. So especially Larkfleet's a good example. So they haven't put enough documents on there to do a 14-day consultation. So that's been put back.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Right, so moving on, just action 3. This was around the mandate again in Barclays, and we were just seeing if a letter was going to be in time. If it was, it got on the April agenda. I assume it's not a comeback, Anita.
No, despite the fact they've got a relationship manager, she obviously doesn't fulfill what she's supposed to be doing. So I've just given her, it looks if it's checks, full stop, can't do anything else at the moment.
Fine. Okay. There was an No, that's all right. We'll leave that. The next one was, I don't know if it was a distinct action, but it kind of was, that I proposed that Councillor Good respond to Sarah Brown, the Highways Agency, and this was over that withdrawing that application for the parking, which of course Peter did, and we got a response. Shooting further down, we obviously did, there was a consultation on the use of publicly held land. We agreed a nil return. Anita, did you send off that nil return?
Yeah, that went off. Yeah, and I got a reply. Thank you for your email. This has been received and logged.
Fine, thank you. Action 5, of course, was a letter received from a little Oakley resident. Clark to respond, and then later on that Councillor Bailey would respond. I know Councillor Bailey has, and Anita, that you must have sent that letter, so thank you very much. The further on, right, so again, this was of course around the nomination forms, all old news now. Any that were received by myself Tuesday the 6th will be taken to my KBC. Yeah, back and forth to there, all taken in the end. So thanks to everybody who got them in well in advance. Thank you. We're going to discuss, obviously we have action 7 was around the answers from the first responder scheme, the coordinator. She has sent those now, so that's been superseded, and we'll discuss that in the meeting. Action 8, again, I believe this was over the measurements of the bund, but we've got something back, haven't we, Anita? So that it looks like that action was clearly done. Yeah. Then I had an action 10, obtained a quotation from Ken Signs, and this was over some concerns we had over the kind of change in the water and the banks down at the berm. Some of the flood water kind of eroded that, so some really deep areas, and I think it was very timely we discussed that given the weather last 3 or 4 weeks. Again, Peter Moak from Ken Signs, and it needs to be applauded, he actually got wind of this even before I could speak to him, and he has very kindly constructed that sign and put it up. So again, Anita, in a spare moment, I'd actually, I think, if you don't mind, could you send a letter to Ken Signs thanking them for their ongoing support? You know, they save us, some of our residents, money. They jump all over things, and I think their support is excellent. So if you don't mind just penning a small note at some stage to thank them.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I was just on terms of matters arising just around the post office. Obviously, yeah, Mark's been online and kind of advertised that, etc., and it seems to have had take up. I just thought, Mark, if you don't mind, just give us a little bit of feedback on how that's been, if you don't mind. Are you on mute, Mark?
Yeah, oddly, the screen just told me. There's been 2 sessions now, so they'll be every Wednesday between 12:30 and 2:30. 15 people, I think he said, on the first one attended. I was number 6, and the same again for the last Wednesday. Everybody seems really happy with it. Ricky's more than happy with it, with the response, and is more than happy to carry on as long as needed. It was his wife doing it last week, so they're both certified postmasters. So jobs are good, and everybody please carry on using it.
Okay. Good. There seems, I'm conscious of time, there seems to have been fairly warmly received. Does anybody have anything particular to point out? Has anybody got wind of any particularly, I don't know, kind of polarized views on it? It seems to have been very well received.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much. Splendid. Right, in that case, we'll item 3C, approval of the extraordinary planning meeting minutes held on 25th of March. Everyone should again have been in receipt of those for a while. Does anybody have any comments, points, or questions on that? Thank you. In that case, I'd like to also propose that those meeting minutes be accepted. And Peter will second Anita, I think, there. Thank you. All those in favour that we accept those minutes? Thank you. I've got, yeah, I've got 5 there. Any abstentions? 3 abstentions. And against? Thank you. I think that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, any matters arising or progress on agreed actions? I think there's one action actually from that meeting, Anita, which was for you to just request a little bit more time to hear those planning applications, the two that were colliding with the next meeting. Obviously that was then superseded as well. But look, just to pick up on that point, because we are going to be discussing planning and it's a packed old item. How I presume they've accepted that, or they haven't rejected our wish for extra time. So
I sent that paragraph through that came from NCALC as well, because I'm assuming that a lot of other parish councils all over the country are were in exactly the same position, and I got various replies back from 1, 2, 3.
Fine.
So the one that I didn't ask for an extension for, that I will have to feed back tonight, is the Larkfleet Homes one, because
sorry, if I just invite Mark to speak now, actually, on that, because it's related.
Larkfleet, as I said earlier, because they haven't put all the documents on there, I've agreed with head of planning and, well, the interim head of planning and the planning officer, that nobody can make a comment on it until they've got all the documents on the system. So the 14 days will start when the documents are on the system. And I've told the residents that I know who've put comments in to cover that.
Oh, that's good, because I thought I was going to be feeding back tonight after this meeting, because the date was originally the 22nd, wasn't it?
Yeah, if you, what I would suggest, might as well do it now, even wait till planning. I would suggest, Anita, that you write back to planning to say, as per the agreement with Councillor Rowley, we'll review once the documents are on there, and in the meantime, request a holding status for our response.
Okay, hold on. Just let me just finish writing that.
Yeah, no, you have all the time. This is important.
Okay, yep, got that.
Thank you.
I'll do that tonight, because as I say, I was a bit worried because the date was originally today. Yeah.
And again, look, we've jumped the gun on that, but let's just cover off Larkfleet again, because there might be some residents watching who are interested. And so as Mark's just clearly detailed, not all the documents are there, and therefore there cannot be an effective consultation. Whilst we're a little bit behind, we want to try and get things done and sorted out, and I'm very loath to keep having extraordinary meetings because councillors are busy and they put a lot of time and effort in. We recognise that this is one area where if we have to, we will. It affects a lot of residents, floods of December, etc., and therefore I think Mark has probably quite properly highlighted that, and that's not just given us, but it's given residents as well the opportunity to send a more considered. It would be easy tonight, of course, to spend a minute or two reprising our objections, spend another 2 or 3 minutes talking about flooding, bang in a response, but we haven't even seen the design of some of these houses, which again might provoke further response or further objection. So it's doing the right thing. It might give us a bit more work to do, but it's doing the right thing by Mark pressing for that postponement. Okay.
Just on that, if I could ask Mark, how is it established that they will say we now have all of the responses, therefore the clock starts ticking? Because will they know that? Is it just all the responses they've requested, or is it?
I would hope that they would. Well, I'm assuming they haven't because of a comment I've had the other day. But I would have hoped that they would have written to all of the people who put an objection in the first time to say that it's the clock stopped. What I would expect is once all the documents are on there, that they will notify everybody that there's a new 14-day period. But I'll keep an eye on it so that I can keep checking to make sure it's all sorted. In fact, it looks like all the documents were put on the 6th of April. Well, they've been backdated for the 6th of April because they couldn't have been, because the amended form was put on the 19th of April.
John.
Yeah, can I just check with Mark? with the transition into the new authority, will this application be handled by offices that are based in Kettering? Have you got any idea about that?
Yeah, that was decided at the last full council meeting, shadow meeting, is for the time being, the 4 planning regions will stay. The office,
Right.
It was recommended that we went to 2 regions, but the councillors said that was a daft idea. So it's going to be 4 regions. So
Good.
as it stands today, I'm still chair of planning for Kettering area.
Lovely. Thank you. That makes sense.
Okay. Right. I think that was worth all those confirmations. Thank you. Right. We'll get to planning soon. Item 4, finance. Anita, item A, bank balances, please.
Bank balances as per the sheet I sent round. The business current account, £42,675.78, and the business savings account, £10,780.21. And the payments are payments to be made. There's an invoice coming from NCALP for the membership for the next year, which is £579.06. And Terry has submitted some land registry application costs, which are £40 for the HMLR application fee and £3.80 for the registered post. That's it.
Thank you. So we need to vote on those payments, don't we, Anita?
Yes, please.
Okay, so that's £579.06 for the NCALP membership, and then to refund Terry £43.80 for those land registry applications.
Happy to propose those, Chairman.
Thank you very much, David. And Peter, was that seconding? Thank you. All those in favour of that motion to make those payments? Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Obviously, Terry, I assume you'll abstain.
Yes.
From that. Yeah. And anyone against? No, I think we've had a lot. Thank you. Right. Item 4C, quotations for removal of graffiti or painting the children's play area and shelter for decision. Now, I think Anita's helpfully wrapped those up into one sheet. I hope everybody's seen those. For a big guy, I still nearly fell off my seat when I read them. We seem to have 2 extremely large ones and one which is getting within the boundaries of reasonableness. Any view on this at all? Because there's a couple of other views.
I thought the
on
most
it.
significant thing, Chairman, was the comment about the type of paint that can be used.
Yes, somebody, we stipulated vandal-proof paint, and the answer that came back is, well, we'll certainly use lead-free paint. Okay, absolutely right. I'm just going to go Mark, then Peter, in order of hands raised.
Yeah, I was surprised at how expensive 2 of them were. Assuming they all, I mean, the Reed's playground equipment, wasn't that the one that came to on site, Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they've actually seen the equipment. So I can't see why we'd want to pay extra for a name. I'd stick with the Reed's playground maintenance.
Okay. I'm going to just bring it slightly up the agenda. We had it's in correspondence, but we can deal with it now. We had a resident write to us making the suggestion. I think she mistakenly thought we were trying to fundraise for it, but she made the interesting point, which is, well, why don't we just remove the panels from that bandstand, which would then save on the repainting costs, and there are other benefits, which means that youths won't hide away, which is a fairly valid point. What do we think of that? Only because it's pertinent now if we're going to make a decision, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, the youths paid for that structure to be installed. They did all the fundraising, and they've done it. I haven't heard any complaints of inappropriate use of it. I don't think it'd look very good if we took the panels off. We'd certainly have to spend money to put side railings on it, I'd leave it as it is. It's been vandalised once in however many years it's been up there. I'm looking at John and Claire.
It must be about 10.
It's 2000. It was before 2012.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely, Mark.
So I'd say leave it as it is and get it repainted.
Okay, PT had your hand up.
Yeah, there were just a couple of points that I'd endorse what's just been said by both John and Mark there. And I noted that the resident was actually stating their personal feeling that they considered the panels to be ugly, as well as the fact that they were suggesting there was a problem with possibly people hiding inside there. Just to go back though on the situation about the confusion on vandal graffiti paint, when we had the first response where the person said that they couldn't use anti-vandal paint, unfortunately I was surprised that somebody who was covering over graffiti would not realise that the form of anti-vandal paint we were talking about was not the anti-climb paint, which is to stop people climbing up drain pipes to get lead off roofs, which is an anti-climb paint, and that is very sticky. Whereas an anti-graffiti paint, so there's two forms of anti-vandal paint, there's anti-climb and anti-graffiti, and we were only talking about anti-graffiti, but they looks like the most competitive of those three has come in with a cost, and I am aware that the extra cost of anti-graffiti paint is it's quite significant. That was one of the other people that had given a response, said that it added cost. So it may well be that the logic is that we repaint it and trust to the law of averages that we have another 20 years, whatever it might be, before we get any vandals come around next time.
I think sorry.
I would endorse if we're looking at the quoting exercise, I would endorse that we go for the less expensive of the three quotes.
Okay, which of course actually seems to include other work as well. Thank you, Peter. Terry, you had a hand up, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I agree with what's been said, but should it be that it gets vandalised again in the near future, then I think we ought to consider removal of the panels, subject obviously to the agreement of the people who raise the funds for it. I mean, the quotation that it seems that we're going for is not unreasonable, but if we were stuck with the higher quotations for any reason and had to do that every couple of years or so, then I think we'd have to think again. But I agree with what's been proposed.
That's a very good point, Terry, and I think I know I'm jumping forward, Anita, to the correspondence, but perhaps in a response to the resident who raised it, that's a very good point, which Terry has made, which is it's only happened the once to this level. We're probably going to go down the route or whatever we agree in a moment. However, that's certainly something that we will consider, and again, we'd have to just tell that resident that obviously we didn't pay for that, it was raised by another group. Okay, I'm getting the distinct impression that we kind of want to go with the cheaper of the three quotes, which actually looks to freshen up the shelter as well, clean the thing off the roof, get best attempts to get rid of the graffiti on the other equipment. And again, let's be fair, there's hundreds of people now flocking down there, getting the sun, it needs to be done. Well, I therefore propose that we accept the quotation by Reeds, which comes to £800 for all of the work combined, but I think that's net of that. And that's my proposal. Mark?
I'll second that.
Second, thank you. All those in favour of that motion? Thank you. Abstain? Against? Thank you. Has somebody just left the meeting? Oh, sorry, on my screen, everybody just suddenly moved around. I don't know if
it was because David put his hand up, I think.
Or David clearing out his garden shed. Okay. Yeah. Great, thank you. Right, item 4D on finance. Back on time. Closure of Fortis, the Kettering office. We've had a letter, haven't we, Anita? And they're talking about that they've got a lot of boxes of our financial records. Is it they're not shifting or moving or something?
Well, they'd still got last year's hard copies of some things I'd given to them in person. but they have since posted them back to me. I have since spoken to the senior manager, who is Jane Midlane, and who I've dealt with for quite a few years. And she said they are more than happy to continue doing the parish council's accounts, and she says we'll work out the logistics because I said, you know, it would be decided at this meeting tonight, and she said if and when it was accepted, we'll work out the logistics of getting it to them. It's going to be at Rushmill in Northampton.
Okay.
Is it Rushmill's estate?
I think it's Bushmills.
Bushmills.
Yeah.
Bushmills.
Mhm.
I mean, in sorry.
Now is the time, Chairman, to look at the NCALC.
Sorry, David, you broke up. Say again, please.
Yeah, NCALC offers a service. I wonder whether now's the time to look at that. Which a lot of parish councils use.
Yeah, I'm just a bit worried though because of the time factor, because as you know, it's quite a tight timetable, isn't it? And
well, why not do it this year and then review it after that? See how it goes.
Yeah, I think the reason why I'm happy that, you know, as a provisional potential move, even though it's in Northampton, I like dealing with the same person. And this Jane Midlane, she's the only person of all the ones I've dealt with, well, since I've been doing this, that can get the PJF Little John form. She can do it correctly. None of the others have done it correctly. And so I'm I know it's not up to me, but I like the continuity angle of it. But for this year anyway, I am worried if we start trying to change that it's not going to, the system isn't going to be finished and get to PJ Littlejohn in time.
So what are you saying, Anita? That it's better for us to stick with Fortis, but just every now and then somebody has to make a trip to Northampton to deposit documents or pick them up? Yeah,
I mean the only hard copy documents normally that I take over is the invoices, the obviously the minutes of the meetings. Is there anything else?
Anita, my wife actually saw this, and she works in Northampton. She drives there and back most days. So, you know, I think we can get around that logistical issue. I think you being as the responsible financial officer, your comfort that you've got somebody to deal with, which whatever, yeah, I think supersedes the inconvenience I or somebody might have ferrying back and forth. I'd like to put your mind at rest to say we'll stick with them if that makes things comfortable, especially if we're losing David Watson, which we are.
Yeah. Oh yes, I was really worried there.
So look, Anita, we'll take the, you know, we'll take that path if that's what you wish.
Oh, that's brilliant. That I feel a lot.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, Chairman.
No. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Right.
Does that need to be? Does it need a proposal or not?
I'm not. Does it, Mark? Because at the minute it's just we're not actually changing what we're doing. It's just our supplier.
I'd do a proposal and second it just to confirm it.
Okay. I'm happy to propose, Chair.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. All those in favour, we continue with Fortis.
Okay.
Splendid.
Thank you.
Against? Abstain? Thank you. Right, in that case, let's move to item 5, planning. I'd had 8:15 on my sheet of paper. It's 8:14, so look at that.
Whoa.
Woo. Right. And hoping to finish planning by 8:55 if we can, perhaps ahead of time if we're getting rid of Larkfleet. So over to you, Claire.
Okay, so decisions. I'm not going to go into the details of them, but 26 Queen Street, and that's one's been withdrawn. That was just windows. Number 1 West Street, listed building, that's been approved. 18 Wood Street, that was to turn a house into a garage, and that's been withdrawn. Newton Buttery, and that was a caravan storage area, and that has been refused. Now, Moat Farm Barns adjacent. This was the agricultural barns to be demolished, and that's been refused. And the last one, Boughton Wood Lodge, which was the Duke's nephew's house, and that's been withdrawn. So
withdrawn.
Yeah. So I've got no information about that, why or where, what they're doing, but okay.
Okay.
So that's all of them.
Okay. I think
question?
Peter's got a question. Sorry.
Yeah, just on, I wouldn't necessarily have raised it, but Claire mentioned it there, that 26 Queen Street has withdrawn their application for replacing their windows. They're currently replacing their windows. It's happening now. It's been happening for the last 2 or 3 days. And when I saw they'd withdrawn it, I was not aware whether there's some reason why they've withdrawn it. And as I say, they've actually done it.
Okay. Mark, do you have some insight?
Yeah, I mean, it may be, I'd noticed that, but it may be that the planners actually told them they didn't need planning permission, so they've withdrawn it. But if they've withdrawn it, there's no reason for withdrawal gets put on the system, because that's the applicant's privilege.
Yeah, the withdrawal notice that's on there, the planning department's notification of the withdrawal does say, well, first of all, it's on there and it does say that it was withdrawn. So as I say, obviously I would assume that was the set of circumstances you'd have if the applicant had changed his mind, but I was surprised that it was not ruled that it was because it was quite a detailed application, considering it was only for a change of windows, but it was within a conservation area. So I thought there must have been some issues, and I was very surprised to see it withdrawn. But and strangely, the windows that they're putting in are substantially different to those that were considered or contained within the application. It's merely want to know. I'm not necessarily saying the parish council needs to take any enforcement action on it.
Well, we're in a slight quandary here, because it's similarly, if somebody was carrying out some work and there was some question about whether or not they'd applied for it, particularly if it affected a conservation, I think we would be actually up in arms, and I think we'd be expected by residents to climb in. This might actually be complete, as you say, Peter, and no one likes the grass, but at the end of the day, we're in this position, Peter, John, rather.
Yeah, I mean, can we check with planning and enforcement, I guess? Because I think there are legitimate concerns, and it may be absolutely fine.
Sorry,
but
Terry, were you about to say
people
something?
will ask as well.
Yeah, I mean, it does have obviously the planning officer's details on the application, so we could make direct contact.
Terry, sorry, were you about to say something?
No, well, I was just nodding, really. I mean, if as has been said, the windows being installed are substantially different from the application, it raises queries, and I can't picture the property in my mind, but it's a conservation area, and presumably the windows are visible, are they, from the road?
Oh, yes.
So they surely need permission.
Yeah.
I think Anita, if you just send a note to planning about that, just a very quick note. The fact is, we've got to do this on behalf of residents, because otherwise, we can be criticised down the track quite rightly. Sorry, Claire just stole that. Back to you.
Okay, so if we move on to items for planning, I'll try and do them in order. So the first one I'm going to look at is 48 West Street.
Yeah. Oh, and Claire, sorry, I should have said, I wouldn't be in a rush to share your screen unless anybody really wants you to, if that makes sense, given that we've got 6. You're leading, but don't feel
I don't mind. I have got
the
the stuff if anyone wants to see it, I suppose, if there's confusion.
I think if we need to, sorry, I'm being slightly rude, if you continue, but if I was going to say it just might speed it up if it's straightforward. I'm not going to assume everybody has read it because the majority of these were on the previous agenda as well.
Okay. Well, so what I'll do is 48 West Street, and that is a listed building consent, removal of internal walls to open up a kitchen area. It's in the back of a house. I don't really like to say too much of it. I feel like it shouldn't really be a decision, but you know what people do in their own houses. But this is part of the house I think was rebuilt after a fire in 1963, so it doesn't have any historic value to the house. It's just combined into it's removal of 2 internal walls. Don't know if anyone's got any feelings on it.
I think you make the point, Claire, that it's at the back of the house. It's not visible from the road. It's all internal, and it is an old house. But at the end of the day, there's modern living, isn't there? And I'm sure it was done structurally correctly. It's literally knocking through a kitchen diner at the back of the house, not visible. Does anybody have any concerns or more information needed on this? Okay. Does anybody have a proposal? Peter?
No objection.
Okay, thank you. Claire?
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favour of no objection? Thank you, everybody. Abstain? Councillor Rowley. And against that proposal? Great. Thank you. Thank you, Claire. Next.
Well, if we're doing them in order off the agenda, the next one is Camgrain, which Peter had taken over from me. I don't know if he's ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
Peter's always ready.
Thank you.
I'm not sure how to take that, but yes, yeah.
No, well prepared. That's what I meant, Peter.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, the original application was discussed at our parish council meeting on the 11th of January, where it was proposed and agreed that we'd have no objection, subject to the enforcement of a traffic management plan, and we noted there was a requirement for sufficient noise mitigation. The reason it's been put out for reconsultation is there are 2 sets of amended plans that have been lodged. On the 16th of March, a set of amended plans covered a submission of a 48-page flood risk assessment document that identified no risk from fluvial flooding, no risk from coastal flooding, which perhaps doesn't come as a surprise, low risk of surface water flooding between 1 in 100 and 1 in 1,000 years likelihood, low risk of groundwater flooding, and that the surface water drainage from the site would be to a SUDS compliant socal. So essentially, it was a very detailed report referencing the government website and the maps thereon, saying there was no risk from flooding. The second amended plan covered the submission of a whole set of revised landscape and visual impact visualizations. Essentially, that's a duplication of an exercise, but it shows that it, non-surprisingly, it is a very large development, and it will be visible for a number of years until it shows after 30 years of growth, the trees will have camouflaged quite a lot of it. But I don't think having approved the application to build it, we should be very surprised that you can see it. So I don't see any reasons to raise any objection to the 2 reasons for reconsultation.
Yeah, and because again, it doesn't seem to affect, does it, Claire and Peter? The objection. Oh, sorry. The bits we were most interested in, as you say, which was the traffic management. It's just some slight amendment.
That's within our original submission, yeah.
Okay. Any more thoughts or questions on that, councillors? Okay. Can I have a proposal, Peter?
I propose, therefore, that we maintain the previous position of no objection, subject to those previous constraints.
Okay. Seconded by Claire. Thank you. All those in favour of that. So again, Anita, I think that was that we just no objection, but as you said it, Peter, it's just following our
No fresh objection to the reasons for reconsultation. We maintain our position on the previous application, subject to the constraints that we put therein.
Thank you. All those in favour? Abstain? Thank you. Against? Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter. On to the next.
Right. Okay. I think maybe for the next one, we might want to have a look at it. It's 8 Newton. So, and this is a single story side extensions, solar panels, replace windows, and blocking up a window, adding a new door, adding a roof lantern, and expansion of driveway, although there isn't any information about that at all, or the land.
Chairman, can I comment?
I was just about to ask you to when Claire had finished.
Yeah,
but go on.
Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, I've spoken to people around the village and nobody has any concerns about it. It seems to fit in. However, I was talking to the resident the other day, and the planning officer, having said no problem, just need to get it signed off by my boss, her boss has ruled against it on the grounds that her garden should be open land, open countryside, and not a garden. I have written to them pointing out that, I mean, I've lived here for 31 years and it's always been a garden during that time. Somebody in the village has come up with photographs taken in the 1970s showing it's a garden, but I understand that the application has been withdrawn in the last day or so because the head of planning has vetoed it, and there's some a lot of work going on to sort this out.
Wow. One of the managers
But, I mean, generally speaking,
officers.
I think we were all pretty happy with it. It seemed to comply. It's being put in stone. It doesn't affect anybody.
Well, and this is it. We have to look at the application in front of us. John, sorry.
Just to clarify where the village envelope stands in relation to that.
Excuse me.
I don't know where it does stand, but I think that might be relevant in some way to the comment.
I'm just trying to find it. I can't find it.
That was previously. Sorry, David, can I just ask? That was previously about an owned property, so it's not inconceivable in the past that some of the what is assumed about owned land, countryside land beyond it, was used to incorporate it into a garden. But again, we're considering the application in front of us. Peter, good.
I think strictly it probably is outside the village envelope. I mean, it's only a 50-foot wide strip of land. It's in the middle of nowhere. I find it extraordinary, given the number of developments that the council have allowed that are outside the village envelope, to pick on the least challenging. And it's not as if the extension is actually into that land. His argument, I understand, is that since the garden shouldn't be there, there's not sufficient room in the property to develop it. So it seems an extraordinary argument.
Okay.
And of course, from their point of view, having bought the house from Boughton with the land, if they can't use it, there's going to be some interesting legal moves.
Okay. Well, like I say, that may come back to us, but at the moment, it's what's in front of us, Peter.
Yeah, they are exactly your point, Nick. Yeah, we're looking upon it, the document pack that's been put on as a planning application. If there are reasons other than those reasons that we're aware of for the planners to turn it down, because exactly what Davy's outlined there, then that's outside our remit anyway. We really have to make our response based upon the planning application in front of us. But I would, I think it demonstrates why there is a need for parish councils to have local input, but there's still the necessity of having the overview of the planning departments, the professionals. And with respect to the previous ownership of it, I would have thought, having bought property in the past, searches and land registry searches are done, and I would have assumed that would have picked it up, but it's not a matter for us to even bother ourselves speculating on. We have an application that, if you talk relative to the application, I myself don't see any great objections to it as an application. David was saying that the feedback from the village is essentially not against it. So I think that our job is to vote on that application in front of us.
Does anybody like to request Claire put it on the screen, or is there any more information anybody needs?
I was just, Chairman, I was just wondering whether the planning officer, having established the situation, I've had this in the past where people have bought land from large estate owners and planned to put a garden beyond the house, and then of course as soon as they got there they realized that they couldn't. I was involved, but in the sense that the chap had bought it at auction, so he hadn't had the benefit of legal advice at that point. But I'm just thinking the planning office, seeing what he or she has seen, felt obliged to do that, and then put it back into the melting pot to see what can be sorted out. That's just a feeling, that's all.
Being conscious of time, folks, is there any more discussion? So it's okay. Sorry.
I propose, Chairman, no objection.
Okay, thank you. Anybody second that? Peter, thank you. So the proposal is no objection to this application. All those in favour of that proposal? Okay. Abstain? 3 abstentions? Against?
Hold on. Yep.
Okay. So let's just be clear. David, could you indicate which way you proposed it, didn't you? Sorry. So that's all. Can we just do that again, Anita? Did we get those numbers? Because that was a bit closer, wasn't it? Are we clear?
Yes, it would be appreciated.
Yes. Can we just do that again? I do apologise. Quick show of hands again. All those in favour? And that included David. He proposed it. So that's 1, 2, 3, 6. Thank you. That's 6 in favour. Yeah. The abstentions, and that's 3. Yeah. So that's 9. Anita, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Claire. If you'd like to continue.
Okay, so the next one is for Little Oakley, number 1, and this is for an agricultural barn at the back of the sort of property. As you go into Little Oakley on the right-hand side. I don't know if Terry's got anything to say about it.
Terry?
Not really. It seems to abut an existing building. It's pretty well out of sight. So from a practical point of view, I don't see any objection. I don't think I'm just not sure whether there are any boundaries that are affected, but from an aesthetic point of view, I don't think it's going to affect the landscape of the village as such. It's behind an existing place. I think it's slightly larger, but I have no comments to make. Nothing adverse.
Thank you, Peter.
My only question is: it is outside the village boundary as defined in the site-specific plan, but it's identified as an agricultural building, and therefore I assume there's some form of allowance for agricultural development buildings outside of the village boundary.
Well,
yeah, they are.
I think
agricultural buildings are they're not exempt, but then they're considered differently than residential housing.
Right. Thank you.
There's a lot of
Terry, then John.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say there are a lot of horses in the area, and I suspect it'll be used mainly for horses, stabling, storage of food, and so on. So that's as much as I can say, really.
No. John.
Yeah, I think it's the concern would be whether it keeps to the original footprint.
Well, it doesn't keep. It doesn't, as you can see from the plan, it doesn't keep to the original footprint.
Mm.
But
it's outside their garden.
Sorry?
The building you were saying that it abuts is inside the garden. This new development is outside the garden in the field.
Indeed.
Not our consideration really, Terry, but do they own the field?
Well, that surprised me because I think in the application, I think I saw something which said that they are the owner of the property. And I was surprised to read that because I assume that it's still owned by the estate. But I think if you've got a lease, a long lease, you can still qualify. Mark will put me right on this as an owner, but I've no information as to whether they actually own it or whether they've got a lease on it.
They do state, just to endorse Terry's point there, they do state, because I was surprised by that myself, and they do state within the application that they are the owners of the land.
I do have doubts about that, but I don't know whether Mark, and if they do have a lease, I don't know how long it would be. But Mark, am I right in saying that they would need a fairly long lease to be, but if they had the long lease, they would be entitled to describe themselves as owners?
The ownership's not a planning consideration anyway.
No. I only asked out of interest.
True,
Terry.
yes. True
so
enough.
if they've said that they're the owner, then that's an issue between them and the actual landowner. And
yeah, I do realise they can apply for planning permission without being the owner, but
yeah, you can.
But they do need to state in the application, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not sure whether that's accurate or not.
John.
Yeah, it's village envelope stuff again. I do think we need to be really careful about approving or submitting positive comments about applications that are out with the village envelope, because we will be using that argument against things like Larkfleet developments. So I think we just need to be very, very careful about that.
I mean, in the past, perhaps I've got it wrong, we've actually deliberately made a point of not commenting, saying it's theoretically nothing to do with us. Is that what you're saying, John? But then we have actually been statutory consultees on things outside of the village envelope.
Well, we have in the past many times, I think, said that we note that this is outside the village envelope, and therefore we wouldn't approve an application.
Okay, Mark.
I mean, yeah, John's right, but this is an agricultural, not a residential. But also, I've just noticed that in the agenda, the planning application number is wrong. So could someone tell me what the actual planning number is, please?
No. Not without looking.
No, couldn't, I'm afraid.
Not without sharing my screen.
See that?
Because it's you've actually, well, that the number's wrong completely.
I think it's 0193. I don't know where 015.
That's the previous
it's
one.
copied from the previous one, so yeah.
0193.
0193 I've got down in my notes, yeah.
Right, thank you.
NK 2021 0193.
Can I just chip in while?
Yeah, go on, Terry.
Yeah.
On the agricultural aspect, there are other buildings, loose boxes and so on, which have been constructed in the, if not that field, neighbouring field, and no planning applications been made for those. So I'm guessing that they're just relying on the agricultural aspect, which then makes me wonder why this application isn't dealt with as an agricultural building.
It's a steel barn to be painted juniper green right on the edge of the village, if not in the village at all, and the kind of thing that you'd almost expect to see as you drive into Little Oakley, and it would just fade into the background. Look, I mean, unless anybody has an actual objection to it, are we talking about, you know, the potential of no objection or the potential of no comment? Is that really what we're saying here? and whether or not we don't want to set a precedent of no objection when it should just be, we just don't comment.
I suppose that the planning officers will pick up the issue as to whether it's out of the envelope or not.
It is outside the envelope. I've just looked.
Yeah, I thought it was. It's on the other side of the boundary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But then there's the agricultural exemption, which might help them then.
Again, and I don't want to prolong this because I'm conscious of time more than anybody. We would want to object if somebody wanted to build something right next to the village boundary, because our residents would expect us to, which then impinged on village whatever. So maybe a kind of a policy of not commenting if it's outside the boundary is not the right thing to do.
No, it isn't.
Because is that what you were effectively saying, John? I thought it was the opposite.
Yeah, I would, in fact, I would propose that we object. In fact, that's a proposal from me.
Propose that we object to this.
Yeah, because it's outside the village envelope. That's where I stand on it.
I think the validity of it is the fact that it's outside the village envelope, but it's immediately adjacent to the village envelope. So if it was an agricultural barn in a field well away from the village, we might even have a different view, but it is very close to housing. So there is a concern about that. And obviously with agricultural buildings, there is a requirement to demonstrate need. I think the planning officer would be interested to see why one field needs its own barn.
Okay.
So I think John's note of caution is justified, and that we would obviously we can have no objection, we can have an objection, we can have an approval subject to, or we can have an approval. So we've got certain comments that we would like to be brought before the planning officer, and our concerns are those that have just been outlined.
Okay. So your proposal is objection, John?
That's my proposal, yes.
And is that seconded?
Yes.
Sorry, who seconded it?
I'm just saying, is anyone going to second John's proposal of objection? Paul, thank you. All those in favour of that proposal to object? 4. All those abstaining? 4.
Yeah.
And against? Oh. David, what was your... David Watson, what
I was abstaining.
Yeah, because
I was
abstaining means you're not voting, so it's passed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have that, Anita. That is as per John's proposal, proposing that we're objecting on the grounds of John that it's outside the village envelope. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right, folks. Sorry about this. Everyone's doing really well. Sorry, there's a lot on the ticket tonight. Sorry, back to you, Claire.
Okay, so now we've moved on to 16 Queen Street. We heard from the applicant earlier about for my mind, it's a working shed hidden behind the wall of the croft. And I think she's probably explained. The other thing would be that will be solar panels on it. You won't see them, I wouldn't have thought. So I don't know what everyone thinks about it.
I can understand the confusion over is it timber boarding or pine logs. It's actually it can be one and the same things. It's like, is it carpet or is it fabric? You know, it is the same thing in a description. I can picture it because I actually had one in my previous house. We affectionately called it the log cabin. What it was actually, we don't really know, but I had it pretty much identical. I think, yeah, I mean, it's behind the wall. It would, for appearance's sake, it would appear to be a wooden shed, a fancy shed, an outhouse, a structure, a cabin. The residents emphasise, yeah, she'll be working in it like half the people in the village will be working from home. I don't see any, but myself, I don't have any concerns with it. Does anybody need to see any more information on the screen who may not have had a chance to look at it in terms of a plan? Okay. Any more thoughts?
No, I'm ready to vote on it.
Okay. Anybody want to propose?
I
Okay,
propose
Claire?
we don't object.
Okay. Peter, was that a seconding there?
Sure.
All those in favour of no objection?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you, David. And then I presume abstentions 1.
Sorry, how many were in favour?
Sorry, Dave Rushton, which way did you vote? Was it abstention or was it for?
I'll abstain. Sorry.
Thank you. So unless I have this wrong, I think that we have 7 for and 2 abstentions. Anita.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Back to
And the
Claire.
last one. And the last one is 34 Skeffington Close, and it's a single-storey side extension. It's classed as a side extension. I think does it just over? It just steps outside the back of the house to the side, not by very much. Most of it's in the rear, so that's why they've had to get planning permission. But it looks to me just a simple extension.
Small utility room tucked in the back right corner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Peter?
Yeah, endorsing what Claire says. There's only a very thin sliver of it that essentially seems to be viewable from the street view. So I don't see any objection to it.
No. There's been bigger side and rear extensions on Skeffy.
Yes,
All the
indeed.
houses are varied, so it's not sort of got to follow a pattern along there. It's
Okay. Peter?
Objection. I propose no objection.
I'll second that. Okay. All those in favour, no objection?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, David. And all those abstaining? Against? Great. Thank you very much.
Sorry, you'll have to tell me the numbers. I have a job to see them on the.
Sorry, Anita.
Screen.
So that was 7 for 2 and 2 abstentions. 7 for the proposal, 2
And 2
abstentions.
abstain.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
and the Larkfleet one will be a new meeting.
It will.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
That's all done then.
We're all planned out.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Claire and Peter, for assisting. Thank you. Great. We're okay for time. So item 6 to confirm timings, dates, and locations for the May meeting. Again, this is just. I know we've done it. I just want to absolutely affirm, unless I have this wrong, it's Village Hall, 17th, Monday, 17th of May, parish meeting 6:30, AGM 7, parish council proper 7:30. Anita, has Brian come back and confirm the space?
No, I will contact him.
Please.
And confirm it with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, in general, the village hall is booking up fast for things. So you know, I mean, I had a chat with Brian about a month ago when it looked like, you know, the announcements came and things, and you know, he certainly knows, you know, that we'll be meeting in there, but he just doesn't formally confirm it.
Yeah, I know he knows.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
Sorry, can I send
Dave.
my apologies? Can I send my apologies to that? Because I probably won't be there at that meeting.
David, you won't be a councillor.
Right, yeah, no, fine, okay, fine. I didn't know when the elections were, but yeah, fine.
Okay. Thank you. Right, we'll move to item 7 then. And we've got quite a lot of correspondence, and I plan to go through all, but except maybe one, only because, again, these are from mostly from residents raising things which have been slightly delayed for one reason or another. So item 7A, this is communications concerning first responders. So just as a kind of summary of that. So obviously there were some posts on Facebook some time ago, quite a few weeks ago, from a resident saying that she's going to be the first responder for the village, and undertaking training and will be first to respond. That obviously raised quite a lot of concerns, which were voiced, I think, to at least 2 or 3 of us verbally. I think it's anything personal, but more that, what's all this about? Basically, nobody knows, and are we not having ambulances? We composed a letter to the coordinator, and by the last meeting, I think we were still waiting for the lady to come back to us, but she has now come back, the coordinator for the scheme, and she's written back to us with answers to all our, to most of our questions. So this has hung about a little bit, but obviously, as we resolved last meeting, we need to have answers to those first. So the situation as it is we have a resident who wants to step up, wants to volunteer to be a first responder. A group has said, great, we'll take you on, train you, but you're going to need funding for equipment. I think it's up to 1,500. There's been a lot of questions raised about kind of selection process, vetting process, and whatever. So the question is what next in front of us, basically, Peter?
I did, after we received the notification from the group organizer, that Miss Price, I did speak to East Midlands Ambulance Services. I spoke to Conor McClelland, who's the county coordinator and training officer for Northamptonshire and Lincolnshire. He did confirm the legitimacy, if I may use that term, or validity of the Northampton Community First Responders Group. He also confirmed the position of Miss Price. There are 8 schemes in Northamptonshire, which this is one. There are levels of training. At the entry level, a trained responder would not be allowed to attend an incident that involved a child. The responders are only notified of incidents within 5 miles of their advised address. They're not compelled to respond if, for example, it's too late, or they're not able to respond for any other reason. But they do have to commit to 200 hours per annum of duty work, plus fundraising, plus meetings and training. This is the only scheme. There are a number of other emergency response schemes, but this is the only community response scheme. And looking at this scheme in particular, I did ask how it would, how the proximity of a community first responder would affect response to a 999 call. And he did say that the dispatching of an ambulance is established by the nature of the emergency. If a call's for a cardiac arrest, the responder gets an automated message via an app called GSAM, but that is in addition to the call for an ambulance. We may well have other issues that we'd like to address with the organizer, but certainly it is a recognised and authorised scheme. Thank you.
And the responder has to commit to, as Peter said, 200 hours a year, or on average 4 hours a week. They can be called to other places. I think there seems to be a kind of expectation that even when you're not on call, you may respond, but certainly no obligation. And they obviously they need to raise £1,500 for equipment, which is predominantly a portable defibrillator. I think the question was asked, well, we have 2 in the village, but the obvious answer came back, but it needs to be portable. You need to be able to take it to the person. And I think it's been emphasised, a lot of this is about people's heart stopping. Whilst the person might attend some burns or something like that, it's a case they may be able to get there for an ambulance and may be able to get a heart restarted. Look, the questions in front of us are, do we have all the information that we need to discuss and make a decision? Being conscious of the fact that we've already gone back, a lot of questions have been asked. Do we have any concerns or thoughts now we need to discuss? Do we invite the coordinator in to speak to us? can we expedite tonight? But either way, we kind of just need to start to move towards a decision, John.
I'm not quite sure what decision we're being asked to make, but I think that we ought to welcome volunteers taking part in initiatives like this and make sure we're working alongside them. I've no objection to somebody coming along to actually explain what they're doing, but I'm not certain what decision we're being asked to make at the moment. Thanks.
Peter?
Yeah, I think, but that really was what Nick was saying there. There are a number of options open to us, and I believe that essentially what we've established is that there is a legitimate and credible scheme, that we had some level of approach from the local organiser to put in front of the parish council a proposal or request for some form of funding. I think that what we could be looking at voting on here is, do we wish to simply go to the next stage, which is to open up a level of interaction with the community first responders. I'm satisfied that the scheme itself is credible. It would then be a question of looking at the practicalities, because it was explained to me by Conor McClelland that they're actually doing no training at the moment because of COVID. Therefore, there is, if we signed a cheque tonight for £1,500 and said, here it is, there would be no progress being made because they're doing no training anyway. So I think I would suggest that the item for discussion was the general topic. I think that I would propose that we say that we're willing to consider taking it forward to the next stage, which I think, as Nick's outlined, we should be going back to the person who put the proposal in front of us and ask them for a proposal and perhaps a presentation.
I'll second that.
Okay, Claire. Sorry, Claire was first.
I was just wondering whether we're likely to hear from, did you say there were 8 other organisations like this in the area? Are we likely to hear from all of them requesting funding as well?
Just to clarify, yes, there are 8, but they are spread about the Northamptonshire, North Northamptonshire. And they are East Midlands Ambulance Service is the umbrella, and underneath that are these 8 schemes, and they're the 8 that exist at the moment. Then they obviously spread it to other areas where they haven't got any coverage, and then there'd be a 9th scheme or a 10th scheme, but they're not competing schemes in any one area. They are schemes that are relevant to that area. And Ms. Price, who made the approach to the parish council, is the organiser for the one that covers this area. So that was a legitimate concern we had previously. Were there competing first responder groups? The only community first responder groups are those that are in this scheme, which is administered by East Midlands Ambulance Service.
Because there was another resident of the village who, when this debate was going on, said, well, I'm a first responder too. So I guess that, one question is, well, if that person is just very modest, fully trained with another scheme, accredited with another scheme, potentially on call 4 hours a week with another scheme, but she's just very modest and hasn't talked about it until now, we could be doubling up.
Yeah, just for clarification, the other schemes, so that there are 8 working groups under community first responders. The other schemes are co-responders, which are like community first responders, but are usually members of other emergency services. There are emergency first responders, EFRs, who are firefighters, and there are medical first responders, who are medically trained technicians or paramedics who respond to emergency incidents in their own time. So over and above being trained as a paramedic, they respond in their own time. So they are other, not licensing, but there are other ways of being registered as a first responder other than being a community first responder. Yeah. The only way that members of the community that are not trained in or part of any of the emergency services can offer this is being trained up as part of community first responders.
Yeah.
So, but all of those come together underneath East Midlands Ambulance Services.
Mm. I mean, look, it sounds worthwhile. So there's two sets of things here for me. It sounds worthwhile, as John says. A resident's stepped up, volunteered, and I'm fiercely supportive of people who volunteer in this community. Okay. On the other hand, I've got to recognise as the chair that we have, a parish plan and a set of priorities. This, for whatever reason, wasn't on it. That's the first reason why. If we stop just a little bit, that's the first bit. And also, of course, I don't think we're necessarily being asked to contribute 1,500, but I'm sure there'll be an expectation of a reasonable sum. The other thing is that, and again, people don't want to appear negative. They don't commit in writing, but they have told myself and at least one other councillor, we knew nothing about this. I'm a retired nurse. I'd be happy to have done this, but nobody said anything. What are you lot playing at? Which, again, it's difficult. Well, one person stepped up and gone directly to the organisation. Hats off to her. But some others said, well, if I knew they were looking, I've got a lot of time on my hands. I'm a retired nurse. I live in the village. I'm actually got half the training already. So the question is, we don't have time tonight for a full debate. We don't want to keep pushing it off. One avenue is to invite the lady who's the coordinator down in the May meeting, if she doesn't mind, and it's a big ask, to say, we'll give this some serious consideration and we'd like to invite you in for 10, 15 minutes, brief presentation. Health is an important issue. However, this is residents' money and other residents haven't been given a chance on this, allegedly. So we're in a bit of a quandary here.
Yep. I think it's an excellent way forward.
Okay. What does anybody think to that? I appreciate it could be inferred as dithering, but we are talking about, doesn't sound like much, but it is relatively large sums, and we've got to be careful not to give money when others haven't had an opportunity. That's what I've felt.
And as I said, according to Connor, there's no training taking place under the scheme at the moment.
Right.
So
okay.
We're not. It's not a ticking clock.
Right. Well, in that case, then it's not like, and I'm not being melodramatic, it's not like, lives are at stake. Okay. I propose that we invite the coordinator to attend at a time convenient to her at any point after 7:40 on the 17th of May in person, if she doesn't mind. With our thanks in advance. Peter, is that seconding that?
Yeah.
All those in favour of that course of action? Thank you. Abstain? Against? Thank you. Sorry it took a little bit longer, but we're still on track. Thank you. Item 7B, letter and document from C. Milner concerning present and future work on the Chase or Clay Dick area. Can somebody summarise that for me? I think I've probably just...
That was a resident that had seen all the discussions that had been on Facebook about the trees being cut down and our response to following our meeting with Boughton, and she then voiced some other concerns about cutting of the verges that she had discussed in the past with Boughton. She detailed a course that she had done. She wasn't professing to be an expert in the field, but she did say she had some experience, and essentially she was offering her services. Any activity that was going to take place on that. I don't think there was any, from my recollection, I don't think there was a specific requirement for us to be doing anything other than, I do remember there was the open issue where she was saying about the cutting of the verges and could they not be done when less often and allow wildflowers to grow.
Yeah, this might be an issue whereby whilst we don't sanction the cutting of those verges, we certainly don't do that or pay for it, and it would appear to be the landowner. On the one hand, we have a landowner that's doing it, probably thinking they're doing the right thing. On the other hand, we've got a local resident with expertise who says, hey, we could do it a different way. Mark.
Yeah, this resident contacted me 2 years ago now, I think, or 18 months ago, about those grass verges, to complain that someone had cut them while the plants were in flower. Neither Boughton nor KBC said that they'd done it. So at the time, we just didn't know who cut those verges down. So that's the big problem of, if it's done, we don't know who it is. And unfortunately, the first time we know it's been done is when they've been cut.
Mm. That's interesting. Anita, is it Clive lost with his lawnmower?
Once you get that speed going, you
Yeah, that's it. Like Forrest Gump. Yeah. So okay, that like I say,
Sorry,
okay.
sorry, Nick. Could I just suggest that we've demonstrated with the involvement we had about the trees that we're willing to, and Boughton Estates are willing to have a fairly open dialogue on an ongoing basis. And I think this could be just something that next time that we have a discussion with Boughton, that we bring this in as part of the feedback from residents.
Yeah. I mean, are we? I mean, it's grass cutting season now. Are we minded to send them a note now to say, look, there's a resident keen to engage? Is it you guys? Are you cutting it? Whatever. I mean, only because given people are out cutting grass at the minute, there's a growth spurt about to happen. Or do we keep that for, as you say, Peter, the next meeting, which we don't know when that is? What, John?
I think your suggestion is a good one. It's partly about building a relationship, isn't it, with Boughton, and making sure that we can make suggestions to them that are legitimately coming from our community, who actually seem to know something about wildlife and plants.
I think so, and I think that actually, if it just saves them taking a dirty great petrol machine up and down there, cutting everything out, spending money on it, then you know it's a win-win. Anybody else? Sorry, I've kind of dominated that. Anybody else? Any thoughts on this? Okay, Peter. I mean, I know you just mentioned about maybe keep it for the next meeting. I'm only making the point over. It is now at the minute grass cutting season. It's in front of us in mid-April. Is now the right time to mention it? Whereas if we left it,
well, they since our last meeting, they have now. As anybody that goes up Claydick will have seen all of the branches all of the trunks they had cut down and had stacked by the side of the lane now have been collected, and so they have done. Essentially, they've made good to the extent that they're going to. I mean, they did say it was never going to look like a garden, but they have moved it on from where it was last time. So it would be, it would not be inappropriate to be commenting that we've noted that, and this is another issue that we'd like a little bit of feedback on.
Yeah. Okay, Anita. Well, yeah, I mean, that sounds about right. So we send a note saying thank you for that. We've noted that. We've had some interest in the grass verges. At least one resident's very keen, and we see the sense in actually not mowing them. Is it you guys? Perhaps before you were minded to mow it again, if you could confirm, could you be in touch? It may well be that there's some alternatives to that which are actually more, a bit more environmentally sound.
Just the same as they've now demonstrated their intent with respect to trees.
Yeah,
we're essentially asking for an insight into what their intent is with respect to verges and hedgerows and anything else. Just an open.
John, sounds good.
No, that was a thumbs up. That's
okay. Do
you want a proposal? Because I'll propose whatever you just suggested.
Okay. John proposes what Peter just suggested. Peter seconds what Peter just suggested. All those in favour of what Peter just suggested?
Yeah.
Thank you. I want that word for word, Anita, all right? Abstain? Against? Thank you, everybody. Very constructive. Item 7C. Sorry, Anita, you caught up. I'm rushing ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that.
Right, 7C. We do have a lot of correspondence, but we're still on time. Parking, Grafton Road and Wood Street. We've had a letter from a resident, obviously not happy that there's still parking up and down. I think from recollection, he makes a couple of suggestions. One is that we've said in the past, we're trying to encourage people to park at the village hall. He said, well, why don't we encourage people to park at the Stone Pit land? And he's also, I think, he's concerned that the school staff tend to park all over the shop, where actually they could park at either of those. Anybody got anything to add to that? That's my recollection, Peter.
Yes, just one aspect of the gentleman's logic that I found somewhat confusing. He did say that the problem with asking the school staff to park in the village hall car park was, and I quote his words, it's asking staff to park more than 200 yards from their place of work. So he was suggesting that they should be parking in Stone Pit Land, which is actually 500 yards away from their place of work. So I'm not quite sure why they would find parking 500 yards away more appealing than parking 200 yards away. But perhaps that's my failing.
Right, Claire?
Yeah, asking staff to park. I'm assuming that all the teachers arrive in the mornings with boxes of stuff and marking and all the other things that they use. I suppose they're parking close because it's practical.
Some do, some don't, I think. There are, 5 spaces, I think, at the school. There is a large teaching staff. I guess the situation is now different. I mean, the school's been all but closed, and it's pretty much open. All the teaching staff are back in. Now, I suppose this resident has quite honestly noticed it now, of course, with school being reopened. But Peter, I guess you make the point. He's got a good idea, but in reality, the village hall is actually closer, village hall car park, than, if that's true, I've not measured it myself.
Yeah, I did it on Google Earth.
There is another. Sorry, Mark, I'll be with you in a second. I guess the other complication is that the Stone Pit Land has a chained up gate across it, which would either basically need to be open all day long, probably from 7:30 in the morning until 6 at night, as well. And then there's the issue of people using the youth club or the fire station. Mark?
Yeah, I mean, as I understand it, the teachers, etc., are parking legally. They've got a legal entitlement to park there. They're not parking illegally. And the Stone Pit Land, the suggestion was that the parish council pay for CCTV to make it secure. Well, I can't see the point of the parish council paying and residents paying to put security up there. Where's the security going to be powered from? We're going to have to run our own power lines in there, all the expense of that. And then open the gates. Presumably someone will have to open the gates in the morning, close them at night, and hope that teachers decide that they don't want to legally park their cars on the road where they're legally allowed to do it, and they'll trundle up to the youth club, park there, and then cross the road twice with all the books and etc. they've got for the school day, and then back again. I think we'll spend all the expense and no one will use it.
I agree.
And it just invites people to go onto that site during the day. Yes, there might be CCTV cameras there, but you only have to look on Facebook for the number of people showing you crimes on CCTV where criminals don't care that they're on CCTV. So I'd be against it completely.
Peter?
We shouldn't lose sight of the fact we've also got lease agreements with Geddington Volunteer Fire Brigade and the youth club on that area anyway. So we would be making secondary use of something we've already signed a lease for other people to be using. So I think that in itself would be a complication. But I would suggest that our response to the resident could be we thank him for his input. However, due to the relative distances between the village hall car park and the Stone Pit Land, we don't see it as a particularly viable alternative.
I think it's just important that we mention that we don't lease the car park to the youth club. It's not included in the lease, is it? As we've discussed with them.
They've got shared use of the land with the fire brigade. Marks.
Yeah.
The thing is, they have a right to get to the car park and the fire brigade. They need a right of way over that land. So if people were parking cars there, then we would be obstructing their use of that. access.
Yeah, I'll just make a point, then Mark, then John. And the thing
Sorry.
is, we're about to spend £30,000 creating another new car park in the centre of the village. I picked up from the resident's letter, he thought that by encouraging people to park at the village hall, we're sending people through the village. And I do beg to differ on that. If I'm a teacher and I live in Kettering, which the vast majority of them do, instead of coming up Queen Street over the bridge and to the school area, or to the Stone Pit land, or down West Street through the centre of the village to the school or the Stone Pit land, if we successfully encourage them to park at the village hall, they just come down Queen Street and park in there.
Absolutely.
So I guess that's the logic I kind of see. Mark and then John.
Yeah, just to clarify what Claire was saying, the lease itself is the footprint of the building. But as Terry said, the fire brigade and the youth club need access. I should declare, obviously, that I'm a member of the Geddington Volunteer Fire Brigade.
Yes, sorry, I should declare that too. Okay. Is there any further action on? Sorry, John. Excuse me. Sorry.
I just concur with most of what people have been saying. It's not illegal to park on that street. I don't see that it's causing massive problems. I think it would also be, we'd be opening a small can of worms should we be starting to have a discussion about use of the youth club car park, and I don't want to go down that one.
No, but okay, but if we look at the residents' issue, and I've got to be fair, and since we looked at the application the other day, I've taken paid more attention to people parking around there. There is nowhere to park, and I get that. That doesn't mean to say other things have to happen.
Yeah.
Are we minded potentially to write to the school and say, look, we just want to remind you of that. We do appreciate some teaching staff do have books and they have heavy loads, and there might be some with mobility issues. Would you mind encouraging your staff, if you don't mind? Now we've got the village hall car park, it's open, you know, you inevitably arrive and leave at different times. Could you just ask your staff to use it, please, Mark?
I'm sorry, but we've got issue. I mean, this isn't the only traffic problem we've got in the village. If we're going to start telling teachers and staff that they please use the youth club, what about the people in West Street? What about Queen Street, Grange Road? All of those roads, Bridge Street as well. All of those roads are heavily used, and if there's workmen there, you can't park outside your house. That's what happens when you live in a village that wasn't designed for cars.
Yeah, exactly, Mark. Exactly.
I agree violently with you, Mark. I'm just saying it might be worth flagging up. There's a number of new teachers and teaching staff. I know this sounds silly. They may not even be aware that there's a car park there. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying we will never get in the business of telling people where they must go and park when there's legal parking on the street. It is just a suggestion because we know the area is congested, especially now. I know you heard my eulogy last time about how many kids and people are running around. It's just a suggestion. But I understand Mark's point. If the majority of you feel that actually that's not, then we won't.
Okay. I can't see that it's going to do any harm.
Chair, to move this forward, could I propose then that we write to the school to remind them that if they could, please use the village hall car park, and we move on.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's what I was going to propose.
I'll second that.
Yeah, but we should write also with.
Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah. There is one issue, which is that of enforcement.
Well,
I mean, I mean, I don't know how many of you have noticed, but there's a DPD van parked on the corner of West Street and New Road.
I'm going to report that tomorrow, David. Yeah.
It's been there for weeks, and it's certainly nowhere near the right distance away from the junction. It's right bang on that junction.
Yeah.
I was going to deal with that separately, actually, and report that to DPD tomorrow. David,
Yeah.
so, but just going back to this to move on. So the proposal is, as Mark says, we'll obviously write back to the resident to say thank you. We'll point that item out, and we just write to school, just remind that the village hall car park's there, and you know, if they could just make sure teaching staff know that. sorry, Anita, just because it's within that proposal, hopefully, the resident copied in the newsletter, so I presume we should copy in the newsletter in our response. It may be published. That's all.
Okay, who seconded the proposal?
Everybody.
Many people.
Half a dozen of us.
All those in favour of that proposal.
Both hands.
Okay.
Oh, look at that. John wants 2 votes.
I always
Against,
want 2 votes.
abstain. Thank you. Right. Thank you, guys. I know this is a bit grueling, but we are making good time. 7D is the email concerning the sheltered seating area. I think we've dealt with that, Anita, and I think we've resolved to, within our proposal for you, if you don't mind, just to respond to the residents, say thank you. It was a good point. But this was, of course, the first time this seems to have occurred. Others funded it. However, if it does happen again, we'll revisit the lady's suggestion. Item 7D was road traffic on the Kettering Road. I think a resident wrote in with a number of questions about the speed limit. I think to be fair to her, I think she'd only just moved to the village. And she was just questioning what all that was about, why the speed wasn't enforced. Does anybody have a suggestion of a response? I mean, look, the obvious response is it's not our scheme. It's at Northants County level. Mark.
Yeah, I mean, the police have done a speed check, as was posted on Facebook a couple of months ago now. That did come out with the result that it was an area that the police would do more surveys on. And I believe the community speed camera team have trained some members of the village. So
that, well, I think that bit's on ice, isn't it, Peter? I think.
Yeah.
Well, didn't it happen
speed watch
2 weeks ago?
No, well, not unless it happened, because I was one of the speed watch team and I was down for the original training and then it was cancelled because of COVID. So unless it's anything, I would be surprised if it's taking place, because we did set up a message group amongst all the people that had volunteered, because if you remember when we first discussed the speed watch proposal, it required support from parish council and a number of volunteers, and we went out, we got a number of volunteers. I think there's 6 or 7 of us that volunteered. We had a message group, and it was all set up to go for the first training, and it was all cancelled. And last time I was informed of anything, and it brings me on to something else, because it's an allied situation, but I spoke to Stephen Barber from Highways, the safety officer, on the 14th about the vehicle activated signage that we were also looking at. And we had got, if you remember a few meetings ago, we did agree that I would establish with them about the funding opportunities and the use of vehicle activated signage. That was put on hold because there was there were no site meetings taking place because of COVID. Well, I did have a site meeting, so I chased him up on Tuesday the 13th, and he said they'd literally just decided that they could start site meetings, and he had a cancellation the next day, so he came out and I had a meeting with him on the main road. And he did confirm to me, because I mentioned to him the speed watch, and he did confirm to me that as far as he was concerned, and he is involved with that scheme as well, that was on hold. So I don't think, I will look into it. I'll open it up again just to make sure that we haven't missed anything. But if there has been any training, I'd be surprised. Just then to carry on, if I may, because it is relevant to this, that the speed signage along the main road is a perfect candidate, according to Mr. Barber, for the scheme and funding under the Police Commissioner's safety scheme. So we wouldn't need to go for the speed indicating device, which gives clear information about the speed that people are moving at. It's not just a question of saying this is a 30 limit. It says you are driving at 50, whatever it might do. I also discussed with him the any opportunities that there may be for the rest of the village, because the you may well remember that there's been a lot of, or there had been a lot of Facebook complaints about speeding down Queen Street, West Street, Grafton Road, those sort of things. The problem with that is the fact that, as we'd discussed, and I brought it to council a couple of years ago, the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit area that we have does not comply with the requirements for a 20-mile-an-hour zone, or a 20-mile-an-hour speed zone, or a 20-mile-an-hour limit. For a 20-mile-an-hour limit, we'd need repeater signs at regular intervals down all of the roads, and for a 20-mile-an-hour zone, we'd need traffic calming measures. Now, we don't have either of those. So he said it would not be, because of the lack of formality on the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits that we've got there. It wouldn't be something that would be funded. It is something, if we chose to, we could look at privately, sorry, the parish council funding it. I then run to David's position. I did then take him along to the Newton Junction to see whether there was any opportunity for signage there. We looked at what was there to set the big picture. It is a 60-mile-an-hour speed limit that's along there. There are 40-mile-an-hour advisory signs, and he said obviously there's been complaints about this and action about this in the past, and Mark's totally aware of this and was involved, and that's why there are 40-mile-an-hour advisory signs there, but they can't put speed limits, vehicle activated speed signage on anything that's that's greater than a 40-mile-an-hour enforceable limit. So that wouldn't be applicable. He did, however, and this is something that we'll look at whether there's any mileage in it in the future. He did see that it was very similar to an application where they'd installed something in Pittsford, where vehicles coming out of the village on a similar hidden junction trigger a sign or two signs that are on the main carriageway that says caution, vehicle emerging from side road. So there may be mileage in having that form of speed indication along there. I say a camera picks up the fact that a vehicle would be coming up from Newton, and it puts warning signs facing both ways on the main road, some distance from the junction, so there's an opportunity for the vehicles to slow down. And he did undertake to give me a documentation of that scheme, and he did indicate that the cost of that, from his recollection, was about £6,000. So it might be something that we would be putting before council at some stage in the future.
Okay.
So I apologise for having taken it into a different area, but it was all relevant to speeding.
I think we can forgive that one because it is relevant, and it is good, Peter. You've brought us up to speed on it. Okay, we will discuss it in the near future, but I think the point is, I think we do need to be armed with these types of bits of information. So there's a few bits there. Peter, I'm going to be cheeky. Would you mind just jotting down a few bullets for Anita to respond to that lady? And I'll tell you why. I think it is. She's asked a number of questions, fine, but I think it neatly summarises where we are with speed in this village, what can't be done, what could be done, what's in the pipeline, and what we're looking at. And it's probably just it's almost a useful letter for us to be armed with. Is the wrong word, but I think this was high on the agenda in the parish plan. And I think it would be it brings it right up to date. And it'd be also useful for any kind of new councils.
The summary, Chairman, might go into the newsletter.
Yeah, I think so. Paul, we're about at that time again, aren't we?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, ideally needed by the weekend, but yeah, it can go in, of course.
Yeah, and I mean, even it might even be a useful thing to publish. Obviously, we'll take out the lady's correspondence details, but not her letter, but just our response, because I just think that will neatly bring residents up to speed. Okay, that's a good idea. Thanks, David.
I'll put some bullet points together, and I'll include Paul in the circulation for it then as well.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. No, a few birds there. Item 7F, I want to defer to the next meeting, remote meeting consultation, actually. Ironically, when we're all together in one room. I don't feel it needs to be discussed at this meeting. 7G, alteration to a listed wall at the Croft, email received. I think this is from a resident pointing out that there was a stone in the wall which had directions chalked on it or otherwise engraved to go to where other houses were, and that seems to have been rubbed off and then replaced with a small plaques pointing out those houses. I'm not sure if it is a planning consideration or just a matter for the owner of that property who we actually saw earlier on. Peter.
Sorry, and I'm talking more than I intended, but on that, he also copied in planning enforcement and Historic England. I don't see that it's a parish council matter. I think that he did actually say his final sentence within his letter was, would the correct body or the relevant body please advise, and I don't think we're the relevant body.
I don't think we are. I know we said earlier on what we were when people are swapping windows out. I think on such a small matter, I think this is more of a matter for a resident being concerned to address it with the householder. That's what I would have said.
Well, but he did put it. It did involve the people that we would need to involve in asking. Should it have been covered by planning?
I missed the other addressees. Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, I agree with Peter. It's either it's a listed. The wall's listed, so it's an planning enforcement issue.
Great. We'll move on to H then. Email received from our Broughton Clockliffe goes. I think we've kind of covered that off, so we're gonna. Yeah. I think we should just send a formal response to that, saying a meeting to be agreed or arranged between the 10th and the 17th of May. Connected then, survey of the Bund, email from Dylan Smith, 24th of March. Is that something we need to discuss now, or is that something that can also be deferred? Is it actually more productive to defer it until May? Anita, Mark, Peter, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm afraid I've got a couple of small things to add under correspondence, only because they came in after the deadline, and also because they do need a fairly quick answer. I've had a message from Jane Rowley, obviously, who leads the or was leading the scouting, which unfortunately is going to have to stop in Geddington. For a
can I declare an interest as chair? I'm chairman of the Scouts.
Okay, right. Thank you, Mark.
And have some working knowledge of Jane Rowley.
And a relative of Jane.
It's not a locker room. Okay. And unfortunately, the scouting group's going to have to close through lack of support. Just the prudent issue on the table for us at the moment is, I think the request is it's going to be some while they demobilise, and can that container stay on the Stone Pit land until there might be some agreement with either the youth club or the fire brigade to take it over for storage. I really didn't think we'd have an issue with that, and I will scan the note and send it to Anita, but I think Jane does need whilst it's a long-term thing, I think she does need a fairly quick response, and I think she's just obviously going through the right channels. Terry?
Just a matter of interest, I suppose that means the Cubs is closing as well, does it?
Beavers, Cubs, Scouts.
The whole group, all three.
What a shame.
It is.
Yeah, because my boys went there. Well, like probably a lot of us, sorry.
It is a shame. I kind of need to go back to Jane, either directly or via Anita. I presume we have no objection to that remaining in situ for the remainder of the year.
It is a shame that the Scouts and Cubs closing, particularly since one of the items in the parish plan was things for younger people to do.
Yeah.
And it seems like younger people don't necessarily want to do the things that we assume they would do.
I'm sorry, Chair, it's not the kids don't want to do it, that the adults won't help.
Yes, that's entirely
adults,
true.
It's not children.
Yeah, there's a complete dearth of adult helpers.
Yeah,
and leaders.
Sadly, it's a countrywide problem.
Yeah.
Getting
really
adults to supervise is very difficult.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd like to bemoan this at greater length. Unfortunately, we do have to move on, but I presume we have no objection to the scouting movement just keeping that container for the rest of the year.
Can I just make a brief comment, because it sort of fits in with that first responder stuff. I think we do have a role in trying to encourage people to take a an active role in the community doing stuff. I don't know how we do it, but maybe that's something to consider in the future.
Yeah. It's, I mean, again, it wasn't for one to try, and
Oh, sure.
the leaders, they really gave everybody enough warning on this.
Yes.
It is sad, but at the end of the day, the problem is the people that were stepping up are the usual people who are stepping up, and they're busy now. They're wearing multiple hats.
Yeah, we've been trying to find new leaders for 3 years now. This has been threatened for 3 years.
So it wasn't for one to try, and I take my hat off to them. And just finally, the school contacted me yesterday again, and it's out of politeness. They are going to the village hall committee. They just want to know, can we have our sports day on the rec field on Thursday, the 7th of July? And they're obviously addressing that to the village hall committee. But I said, well, look, thank you. I'll just ask tonight. I'm sure it won't be an issue, but village hall keep the diary. Again, I assume there's no objection or view on that. Okay, I'll get back to them tomorrow. Moving on to item 8, site-specific Part 2 local plan, main modifications consultation. I read that now some time ago, and I didn't see anything that was prudent. Anybody else have been brave enough to tackle that one?
I didn't see anything of interest either when I looked at it ages ago.
All right, John.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things, and I mean, I tried to understand it, but I don't fully understand it, I guess. On page 17 of the policies map, I think it is, there's deletion of local green space, HV 1016 and HV 1079. And they're responding to a request by the inspector to ensure a sound plan. And it looks as though they're getting rid of the local green space, which is Bob Austin's field, I think, and an area around the meadows. And that seems to relate to something on page 8 of the sustainability appraisal report, which is removal of local green spaces in Geddington. It's hard to understand. I don't know if Mark understands it more than I do.
From memory, they were removed. We asked for them to be removed. The parish council asked for them to be removed because they were inaccurately described for what the green space was aimed for, from memory. I know we asked for it. I just can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember what it is, and without the plan in front of me, I can't.
Yeah,
check it.
It was the pub garden and the horse.
Yeah, that was it.
It was that.
Yeah.
It sounds
it was a green
familiar.
space. The car park had been designated as a green space.
Right.
There were other matters that I picked up. I mean, there were actually 5 main modifications that applied to Geddington, one that applied to Little Oakley, and one that applied to Newton. And so there were sort of specifics relevant to your policy GED 1, GED 2, GED 3, GED 4, GED 5, Little LOA 1, and a new one. So that there were a number of changes to the, or in their terminology, main modifications.
It was the removal of the farmyard development, wasn't it?
No, the Newton one was on page 141 and 142, and that was policy new 1 and supporting text, and it removed the requirement that development should protect and enhance the conservation area, as this repeats existing legislation. So
yeah, I did. Sorry
okay.
to interrupt you, Peter. It's flooding back to me now because I looked at it when we thought we had the other meeting. Were these revisions just not really fundamental? Was it just more conventions and naming conventions and things, really?
Okay.
They were termed main modifications, although candidly, the ones that I saw that applied to R3 villages,
Yeah.
All of them. I mean, Geddington is still a Category A village. Little Oakley and Newton are Category B villages. Those were both put in as major modifications. But the ones specific to Geddington were on GED 1, remove the requirement for affordable housing to avoid repetition with the joint core strategy. They removed the requirement for hedges and soft boundary treatment, as this was addressed by RS5. The land at Sawmills, so they looked at those development areas that were identified within the plan, and that's removed the requirement to respond to the local vernacular for conformity with the National Planning Policy Framework. But it did add in, it required a heritage impact assessment for the development. With the land on the Kettering Road that had been identified for development, it emphasised the requirement for flood risk assessment, required a report for odour impact, added in a requirement for a heritage impact, but removed the requirement for affordable housing. And on the land at the old nursery site, it added in a requirement for an impact assessment. And then there was the light industrial site, where they redefined light industrial. They removed its reference to B1C and redefined it as light industrial. So there were changes, but in reading the justification for those changes, I say it was saying that this does not need to be in here because it's already in the joint core strategy. This does not need to be in here. So they did seem rather administrative. They were quite fundamental. I mean, ironically, they applied to literally every single policy for Geddington, Newton, and Oakley. But I don't think they fundamentally altered the nature of them.
Right. So it's a little bit like lawyers drafting. I've had to deal with this at work recently, where our in-house lawyer got upset because somebody in a contract declared something that was just the law anyway, and there was a big argument that it needs to be taken. Is this just drafting, or is there anything fundamental or consequential? Is my question. I mean, all this sounds sensible. It doesn't say it enhancing potentially, but I don't think there's anything. Again, it's probably some of you are more attentive than me to these matters.
I think the joint core strategy is the overarching policy and the overarching document, and this sits within it. So if we're satisfied that the trouble is you need to read all that stuff before you are satisfied with the changes.
But these were the modifications that were put back to Northants from as a result of the
inspectors,
the Secretary of State's overview. So it was very much, I neatened the document up by doing this.
Yeah,
I think it was. Yeah. Okay. So do we have any comments then, folks, or not, or is that a nil return? It looks to me like a nil return.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. In that case, we'll move on. Item 9, we're just 2 or 3 minutes behind schedule. Environment, item A, Labor Sports UK Cricket Club update and agreed course of action. Peter.
Okay, we had the series of meetings between the 4 representatives of the parish council. That was Nick, myself, John, and David Watson. We met with the cricket club, their chairman and 2 other reps, and we had the English Cricket Board representative, Gedmont Dougal, and we looked very much as we were relying very much on the impact or the input from the English Cricket Board on what is expected and accepted in cricket at this level, in this form of environment. We addressed it in 2 aspects. There was the aspect of the bull strike risk assessment, the report that we'd had from Labor Sport, and then as a secondary issue, there was the planning application for the extension car park. There was a certain level of overlap between those because the problems that were identified within the risk report were also relevant to the planning application, but we did treat them as 2 separate issues. The parties came to a recommendation that we'd be putting back before the parish council now for parish council approval, because we did at all stages identify the fact that the parish council reps were there to participate but not to make a decision. What we saw as So I'm now just addressing risk management of the cricket ground as it is. And for a moment, we're putting to one side any interaction between it and the planning application. So is that somebody? Oh, it's okay. It's Terry. I thought he wanted.
Sorry, I've just muted him.
Okay. Yes. So we did recognise the fact that we were working with a situation that had been the status quo for 30 or so years, that people have been playing cricket on there with no serious reported incidents. But we did say that the new information that we had was the Labosport ball risk assessment. What we looked at was what would be the Labosport recommendation or requirement for fencing if the cricket club were only playing from the central wicket. And what we saw there, that even just playing from one pitch in the very middle of the cricket ground, if we followed slavishly the Labosport recommendations, it would require 10 to 15 metre high fencing all the way around the boundary. Now that isn't anything that is to be seen in any cricket ground, let alone of this sort of level. So we did look to ECB for their guidance on what would be accepted in this area. The proposal that the group has come to, that we're putting before the parish council to see if we feel this meets our needs for risk mitigation, is that the cricket club would stop playing on the first 4 of their wickets. In other words, by first 4, I mean the ones that are closest to the clubhouse. All senior play would be from further pitches, so there would be no senior play from any of those pitches. There would be a 3.7 metre high fence behind the trees and underneath the trees on the edge of the existing car park. That would be funded by ECB. There would be copious and clear signage stating the need for caution around the cricket ground when a cricket match is in progress. That was something that ECB were quite adamant was seen as fair and sensible mitigation measures. Supporting that, there was also the fact that the groundsman would allocate senior matches to those pitches that were furthest away. So in all times, they'd be trying to use the furthest pitch away from the clubhouse. And that the cricket club would make use of any of the parking bays that we were to identify as having any level of residual risk. So nominally those that are closest to the ground. As I say, it was considered by the group that we were taking a reasonable view of risk of cricket being played in an area where the public have access to. So what I'm putting forward as a proposal to the council is that a risk mitigation that we would be taking in response to a risk report that we commissioned would be those items that I've just outlined there. All of the meetings were recorded or put into writing, and those records I've sent them to Anita so that they are on record, and to show the fact that these are ECB recommendations and approved actions. So that's the first issue that I'd like us to be discussing and then taking a vote on, whether we feel that the risk mitigation measures would be acceptable. So it is very much open to yourselves. Those of you, I'm sure you initially studied the Labosport report that we had from them. I did give clear outlines on exactly what it was saying at the time. And what we've come up with is a recognition essentially that without 15 metre high fencing all the way around the boundary, there is inherently some level of risk associated with playing cricket anywhere. But the mitigation measures that we've talked about there were agreed with, identified by and supported by ECB.
I suppose I'd just punctuate it from being at those meetings. Obviously, none of these are in play at the moment. Anything is an improvement on the current, just to be very straightforward about it. So we're talking about playing further away, using the squares further away, then putting up signage, and particularly signage on match days, some netting going up as well. That's effectively the three main changes, isn't it, Peter? None of which are in evidence today. Mark.
Can you just confirm what size netting you're proposing and for whereabouts it's going first?
For this aspect, we were talking about 3.7 metre high on where there's the ranch style fencing down the side of the existing car park that has the trees by it and the benches underneath the trees. So this would essentially be fencing on the line of so there would be netting on the line of the existing fence. Netting, yeah. I couldn't see who it was, but it was.
I think someone's got YouTube running in the background.
Oh, okay. That's going to confuse me. Yes, it would be netting along that edge, essentially underneath the trees. And the reason it would be 3.7, that is the height that it didn't require any significant branches at all to be cut. And it does give a level of protection that isn't there at the moment. And it was seen that the damage that had happened previously to cars there was lower strikes rather than sixes. It tended to be fours that were skimming along the ground and bouncing underneath the fence rather than going over the top of it. But that was the logic of that. That 3.7 metre high fencing, by the way, is also it's the height that can be put up and down at the beginning and end of a season again. So it would be the same as we've talked about in other applications.
Okay, I've got some more questions. I'll let John cut and then I'll come back.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that it's netting, not fencing, isn't it?
Yes.
And it's netting that it would stay up. It would be put up at the beginning of the season and taken down at the end. So it would stay up there during the season. Who's responsible for putting it up and putting it down?
The cricket club.
Okay. Thanks, Mark.
And it would be something that the village hall, because it's adjacent to the village hall car park, the village hall would be monitoring.
So, would it if we have the car park extension, it gets approved? Are we saying we're going to extend this netting across the future whole car park?
I hadn't wanted necessarily to confuse the matters by going on to the planning application. However, since we've opened it up, yeah, the planning application has got a slightly higher fencing there that we put in at the time of 6 metres, because that was the corner of the boundary, corner of the field where balls sixes tended to get hit. So the ones that were coming square with the wicket tended to be fours, and that's the ones that were damaging or could damage cars in the existing car park. For the new car park, we'd said that it looked like it needed 6 metre high fencing. That again would be erected at the beginning of the season and taken down at the end of the season. What the ECB have said is that whereas the ECB originally objected to the planning application, subject to the combined measures, particularly the fact that the cricket club would no longer be playing from the first 4 wickets, they then no longer had any objection to the planning application, and they would recommend to Sports England that both they and ECB withdrew their planning objection.
Sorry, Mark. I'm just going to give the 5-minute warning. We've got 5 minutes left before we finish the meeting. Go on, Mark. Sorry.
Is at 3.7 metres. There is going to be those trees are going to have to be cut back, and if we're cutting back to 3.7 metres to allow the fence to be erected and put down, it's going to look mighty odd during the winter where you've got a square cut out of a tree. Well,
Yeah,
three or four trees is
Yeah.
one point. The other one is that if you look at the cricket ground at the moment, the pitches, some play has been made on the first four pitches. So there is play going on in those first four. Now, whether it's the children's leagues, I don't know. I just noticed the other day that a game had been played on one of those.
They had their first open match on Saturday, and they were certainly playing from one of the furthest wickets away. Without, I don't doubt there's possibly that some junior.
I don't know. I'm just pointing out that it has been played on.
Yeah,
They did. Sorry to interrupt. They did make
commitment. Sorry.
They did make the point. Yes, they did make the point in the meeting that they'll be moving junior cricket, and the lower leagues to those first four. So again, literally, they're kind of up to 7 years old, all stars on one and so on, and move the seniors, the first team, the guys who can slog it, as far back as they can. I mean that's it. I mean we can't stand out there policing it, but that's what they say is on the table.
It was given as an assurance, but you know, my opinion is that it is it was something that until we actually organised the ball strike risk assessment report, we appeared to have no reservations about cricket being played down there on all of the wickets. We weren't getting protests from members of the public, from residents, it wasn't being brought before parish council. We responded to a unique set of conditions, and we've come up with something that offers a higher level of security than we would have had if we hadn't done what we're proposing.
So you're proposing, Peter, that we accept, because we'd have 2.5 minutes left. You're proposing that we accept that. You're proposing that we agree to that, and that the cricket club put those measures into place.
That's what I'm proposing.
Well, I'm happy to second that. I feel it takes us some strides ahead. You're never going to eliminate all the risk, but it takes it away. And I think particularly you can approach that recreation ground not knowing a game of cricket's going on until you get there, until you get right on top of it. And I think those three measures combined reduce the risk from an expert to that level. That's why I'm seconding that proposal.
And Chair, without some kind of safety precautions, we actually are in a position of almost telling the cricket club we can't allow you to play.
Exactly.
Potentially. I mean,
we can't do that either.
We are, well, John, we're in a sticky situation.
I know. I mean, I think Peter's
Chair, you've got a proposal and a second, and you've got 2 minutes before you can't make a decision.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's the proposal, that we accept those three measures are put into place. All those in favour? Abstain? Against? Paul? Thank you. Then that's carried. Sorry, we had to rush that to the end. Thank you, Mark, for the prompt. Okay. Looking at the time, we won't be able to get into the last two items. I think they can wait. We've got 1 minute left. Is there any other matters, urgent matters for Newton Little Oakley, or any other business in general needs to be raised? Mark.
Quickly for 9C, the parking issues with Halls Close. I've reported it to the head of housing because it's KBC land, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, we'll have an offline conversation about that. Thank you. Anything else, guys? With 30 seconds left.
Yeah, in 30 seconds, two very quick matters. The lights at the cross that have been reported as out. I have spoken to TJ Electrical. They're due to be coming and sorting that out, and it will fall underneath the spend allowance on emergency spend, and obviously the bridge, the accident that happened on the bridge, and I've spoken to Historic England and Highways, and it is going to be repaired, subject to an approved scheme by Heritage England, Historic England.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, for your intervention on that. Everybody, thank you. It's been a grueling meeting. Thank you very much for your attention. Nobody noticed I'd stolen John Padwick's shirt for it, but there you go.
Oh,
so
that's where it is.
Thank you all very
You
much
bugger.
sincerely. So
I didn't think you'd do it in time. Well done. The
and
whole
again,
agenda.
and again, let's close by saying thank you to David Watson for 25 years. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
David.
Thank you,
I'll
David.
still be around, guys.